Imagine standing barefoot on the soil of a world untouched by civilization. No paved roads, no glowing cities on the horizon, only endless stretches of grassland, forests thick with shadows, and skies so vast they made you feel both tiny and infinite at once. This was Earth 100,000 years ago, long before the rise of agriculture, before written words, before even the faintest idea of what we'd one day call history. Our ancestors walked this landscape in small groups, families, tribes, sometimes no more than a few dozen people bound together by blood and survival. They were not yet masters of the planet. If anything, they were just one species among many, living in a delicate balance with saber-toothed cats, giant hyenas, towering mammoths, and flocks of birds that could blacken the sky when they took flight. Food, in this world, was not a guarantee. Each day began with a question we rarely ask ourselves anymore. What will we eat today? That question shaped everything: where they traveled, how they lived, the stories they told, and the very evolution of their bodies. But before diving into what ended up on their plates, or more accurately, in their hands, because plates didn't exist yet, we need to understand the world they inhabited. Because the landscape itself determined what could be eaten. The climate was unpredictable. Earth was locked in the grip of the Ice Age. Though the ice sheets didn't blanket the entire globe, they ebbed and flowed, retreating in warm phases, advancing in cold ones. Imagine vast tundras stretching across Europe, Africa's grasslands pulsing with herds of animals, and dense tropical forests where danger lurked in every shadow. For early humans, specifically Homo sapiens, but also their cousins, Neanderthals and Denisovans, this was both a world of bounty and peril. Some environments were generous, offering rivers teeming with fish, berry bushes, and small game scurrying underfoot. Others were cruel, barren landscapes where even roots were hard to find. In such places, starvation wasn't just possible, it was inevitable for those who couldn't adapt, and adaptation was the name of the game. Think about it. 100,000 years ago, survival wasn't about who was the strongest in a single moment. It was about who could adapt to constant change. Seasons shifted, herds migrated, droughts came and went. Food sources appeared and vanished. The humans who thrived were those who learned to track, to wait, to invent, and above all, to share knowledge. What did this mean in practice? It meant that what our ancestors ate was not a single menu written in stone. Instead, it was a shifting, dynamic puzzle, a diet that could swing from feasting on the rich meat of a freshly hunted animal one week, to nibbling bitter roots, and scraping marrow from bones the next. Yet within that struggle lay a hidden advantage, because the very unpredictability of their meals forced humans to evolve brains that were flexible, inventive, and socially cooperative. Picture this: a small band of humans sitting around a fire at dusk. The flames crackle, shadows dance across their faces, and in the center, roasting slowly on sticks, is not a grand feast of mammoth meat, but something far humbler, perhaps tubers dug from the earth, charred fish from a stream, or a handful of nuts cracked open with stone tools. The meal may seem meager by today's standards, but in that moment, it was everything. It was warmth, nourishment, and community. It was survival. The world 100,000 years ago was not just a backdrop to their story. It was an active character, shaping every decision, every bite of food, every life or death struggle. And so, before we dive into the details of meat, plants, fire, and all the strange delicacies of prehistory, let's carry this image with us: a raw, unpredictable earth, and small bands of humans carving out their place within it. Because without understanding the harshness and beauty of that world, we cannot truly understand the diets that sustained them. And trust me, what they ate will surprise you. Imagine crouching in the tall grass, heart pounding, as a herd of gazelles grazes in the distance. The air is hot, your body is lean from days of walking, and every muscle in your frame is focused on one goal: meat. For us today, a steak is something bought, cooked, and served. For our ancestors, it was something fought for, often at the risk of their lives. Contrary to the Hollywood image of early humans charging mammoths with spears, most of the meat our ancestors ate wasn't won through dramatic hunts. It was scavenged. Think of a lion taking down a wildebeest, tearing into it, eating its fill, and then leaving scraps behind. That's where humans came in. With sharp stone tools and clever teamwork, they could arrive after the predators had gone and crack into bones for marrow, one of the richest calorie sources available. But it wasn't without danger. Hyenas and big cats guarded their kills fiercely. To sneak in, Humans had to be patient, quiet, and opportunistic. They were not always the hunters. Sometimes, they were the hunted. The fascinating twist is that the struggle for meat wasn't just about filling bellies. It reshaped human evolution. Animal fat and protein fueled brain growth. Every bite of marrow, every strip of flesh pried from a carcass, fed not just the body, but the expanding organ in the skull, the very organ that made us capable of imagination, strategy, and language. Still, meat was never guaranteed. Hunts failed more often than they succeeded. Imagine stalking a herd for hours, creeping closer, only for the animals to bolt at the last second. Empty-handed, the tribe had to fall back on safer foods. Roots, berries, insects. Meat was glorious when it was there, but devastating when it wasn't. So how did humans tip the balance? They learned patience. They learned cooperation. And they learned tools. The first wooden spears, sharpened stones, coordinated ambushes. All of this came from the relentless drive to claim meat, in a world where predators always seemed faster, stronger, or deadlier. It was never a simple story of hunters dominating the food chain. It was a constant dance of risk and reward, of predator and prey, where humans sometimes triumphed, but often only narrowly survived. And when survival depends on food, what happens when the meat runs out? That leads us into something our ancestors relied on far more than we might think. Plants. When we imagine cavemen eating, the picture in our heads is usually all meat, all the time. But the truth, plants were the real backbone of survival. Beneath the soil, hidden from predators, roots and tubers were treasures of calories. Picture our ancestors using sharpened sticks to dig into the earth, pulling out starchy roots, caked in dirt. They roasted them in the fire, turning them soft and digestible. Those tubers, though humble, could keep a tribe alive when animals were scarce. Then there were berries, vibrant splashes of color in the green wilderness. Some sweet, others bitter, some poisonous. Early humans learned, often the hard way, which were safe to eat. Mothers taught children the difference between nourishing fruit and deadly imposters. Over generations, this knowledge became part of culture, shared in stories, encoded in rituals. And don't forget, nuts and seeds. Cracked open with stones, they provided fat and protein, packed into small, portable forms, perfect for long journeys. Wild grains too were gathered, though not yet farmed. Imagine chewing handfuls of seeds stripped from grass stalks, gritty but filling. Over time, these grains would set humanity on the path to agriculture, but even long before farming, they played their role. Plants may not have carried the drama of a lion hunt, but they carried something far more important: consistency. Animals fled. Predators stole kills. But plants grew with the seasons, quietly, reliably, nourishing those clever enough to harvest them. In fact, if you could time travel back 100,000 years and share a meal with our ancestors, odds are it wouldn't be a hunk of meat at all. It would be roots, nuts, seeds, and perhaps a scattering of berries. And yet, plants offered more than calories. They offered medicine. Leaves soothed wounds, bark reduced pain, herbs fought infection. Food and healing were entwined, and our ancestors were early experimenters in both. So yes, meat shaped our brains. But plants kept us alive day after day. And together, they formed a diet that was far more balanced than the myths suggest. But there's one element that turned both meat and plants into something revolutionary. It wasn't just what humans ate, but how they prepared it. And for that, we need to talk about fire. Imagine the first time one of our ancestors stared into the flickering light of fire. Heat radiated outward, warmth against the cold. Flames danced. Sparks rose into the night sky. And then came the realization. Food, when placed in this fire, transformed. Raw tubers, tough and bitter, softened into something edible. Meat, once tough and filled with dangerous parasites, became tender and safer to consume. Fire was not just warmth or light. It was a recipe, a tool that unlocked nutrition hidden within food. Cooking changed everything. It meant more calories, with less chewing, less digestive strain, and more energy available for the brain. In fact, many scientists argue that cooking was the single most important innovation in human history, even more than farming. Without it, our brains might never have reached their extraordinary size. But cooking wasn't just about calories. It was about community. Picture a circle of humans sitting around a fire at dusk. Food roasted in the center, shared hand to hand. Stories were told. Bonds were strengthened. Fire created more than meals. It created culture. and it offered protection. Predators feared flames. The night became less terrifying. Around the fire, humans became something new, not just survivors, but dreamers. It's easy to overlook how much we owe to that simple act of placing food into fire, but without it, the human story might have been very different. Still, fire didn't erase hardship, because even with roasted tubers and cooked meat, food wasn't always plentiful. Sometimes humans had to turn to the strange, the unexpected, even the downright unpleasant. When survival is on the line, the menu expands in surprising ways. Insects, for example, crunchy, protein-rich, and abundant. Grasshoppers roasted over fire, ants gathered in swarms, termites dug from mounds. They may make modern stomachs turn. But for our ancestors, they were a vital resource. Then there was marrow. Bones left behind by predators became treasures. Humans cracked them open with stones, sucking out the fatty, nutrient-dense marrow that fueled their bodies. Honey was another prized delicacy. Risking stings, humans climbed trees or smoked out bees, stealing golden combs dripping with energy. Sweetness was rare in prehistory, and honey was worth every sting. And fermentation, though not fully understood, played its part. Fruits, left to sit, might ferment into mildly alcoholic brews, or sour foods that preserved calories longer. Did our ancestors stumble upon these by accident? Almost certainly, but once discovered, they were never forgotten. These strange foods remind us that survival was about flexibility. Humans were not picky eaters. They were experimenters, willing to try anything, to risk new flavors, to stretch the definition of food. That adaptability was a superpower. Yet even with adaptability, food was never constant. Sometimes there was abundance. Sometimes there was nothing. And that rhythm of feast and famine shaped humanity in ways still visible today. Food was never steady. Seasons dictated the rhythm. In the rains, plants flourished, animals grazed, and food was abundant. In the dry seasons, rivers shrank, vegetation withered, herds migrated, and hunger gnawed. Our ancestors lived in cycles of plenty and scarcity. Imagine gorging on berries when they ripened, stuffing as much as you could before they spoiled. Imagine feasting on a mammoth kill, meat drying in the sun, everyone eating until full. And then imagine months later, bellies empty, surviving on roots so bitter they made your mouth burn. These rhythms left marks on our biology. Our bodies evolved to store fat in times of plenty, to burn it slowly in times of hunger. Even today, echoes of those feast and famine cycles remain. The cravings we feel for sugar, the way our bodies cling to fat, all of it has roots in a time when tomorrow's meal was never promised. But hardship wasn't just physical. Hunger tested communities. It forced cooperation, sharing, even migration. It forged resilience. And in those lean times, the importance of sharing food became clear, because food wasn't just fuel. It was connection. Around the fire, food was more than survival. It was ritual. Sharing meat, dividing roots, passing berries hand to hand. These weren't just calories being exchanged. They were bonds. Food reinforced cooperation. The hunter who brought down an animal didn't eat it alone. They shared, because generosity kept the group alive. One day you had food, another day you had none. Sharing meant survival. Over time, meals became stories. They became ceremonies. They became culture. Eating together reinforced trust, forged friendships, and created identity. Even the simplest act, breaking a roasted root and handing half to someone else, carried meaning. This was the beginning of something profound. Food as a social glue, and that glue, more than any single tool or weapon, was what allowed humans to build tribes, then communities, then civilizations. But the food itself wasn't just shaping culture. It was shaping bodies, brains, and evolution itself. Our ancestors' diets left fingerprints on our biology. Protein and fat from meat fueled brain growth. Starch from tubers provided quick energy. Nutrients from plants strengthened immune systems. Honey gave bursts of sugar that powered long hunts. Over generations, these foods sculpted us. Our jaws shrank as cooking made chewing easier. Our guts shortened because cooked food was easier to digest. Our brains ballooned, demanding more energy, more calories. Diet wasn't just about survival, it was about transformation. Every meal fed evolution. Every bite rewrote the human body. And even today, our cravings whisper reminders of that past. Our love of fat, our sweet tooth, our taste for salt, all of them born in the savannas and forests of prehistory, when those things meant survival. But how do we know all this? The answer lies buried in bones and caves. Archaeology gives us a window into ancient meals. Burn marks on bones show meat roasted over fire. Residue on tools reveals starch grains from plants. Isotopes in skeletons tell us what kinds of protein fueled their lives. In caves, ancient hearths still hold traces of ash, charcoal, and bone fragments. Teeth, worn down, reveal diets of grit-filled seeds and roots. Even coprolites, fossilized human waste, preserve traces of meals eaten 50,000 years ago. From these clues, a picture emerges. Humans were not strict carnivores, nor simple vegetarians. They were opportunists, omnivores, experimenters. Their diet was varied, flexible, and profoundly adaptive. The caves speak, if we listen closely. And what they tell us is that food was never just one thing. It was everything. So what can we, modern humans, learn from the diets of our ancestors? First, that balance matters. They ate plants, meat, insects, nuts, roots, a broad spectrum of foods. The modern obsession with a single perfect diet misses the truth. Survival came from variety. Second, that food connects us. Meals were not private. They were shared, celebrated, woven into community. In our busy modern lives, that lesson is easy to forget. And third, that we are shaped by the past. Our cravings, our biology, our very culture is tied to those meals eaten 100,000 years ago. Does this mean we should all eat like cave? Not exactly. The paleo diet, popular today, is more myth than science. But it does remind us that food is not just fuel, it is history, memory, and identity. When we bite into bread, when we share a meal with family, when we taste something, sweet or savory, we are echoing choices made long before us. Choices that shaped who we are. Because the story of what our ancestors really ate is not just about them. It is about us. Every bite, every flavor, every memory carried forward through time.